Uncovering the light
31 expressions of light.
All month long, we are celebrating light.
in ways that maybe we wouldn't have thought of before.
Shadow.
Remembering.
Engaging.
Looking at the shadow creates more light.
Turning back to that which we know to be true.
With people around us, with our environments, with ourselves. Welcome to Truth Be Told. It's a brand new month, a brand new theme, and it's a lot of fun. We're tying this in this month with our celebrating 31 expressions of the light. So our theme for this month is uncovering the light. And you might ask, what is the light? Well, the light is that spark of the divine, that life, essentially, that's inside all of us. And so what we're doing for our Truth Be Told is we're taking some of those daily words that we are exploring each day with a fun activity to help create more light in our experience for those around us and for ourselves. And we're just focusing on a word that we would like to look at a little deeper. So this is just an opportunity to go deeply within. So if you've been participating, we appreciate it. If not, and you're curious, go sign up at soulevolutioncollaborative.org, and you can get the daily reminders, the daily word, really fun activities, which I had a really great experience today trying to figure out what I'm going to do for, abundance. And in less than a minute, I had my demonstrations to show that the universe is absolutely working with me on this. I'll tell you real quickly what they were. The first one is I asked for an experience of more time. I would like to experience some sort of abundance in time today. And then I said, and universe, show me anything that helps just reaffirm that you're listening. And within a minute, a woman came up to me and offered me a poinsettia plant to take home, said it was her way of sharing more cheer in the holiday season. And then I drove to Starbucks drive-through to pick up a coffee and zero line. I had so much time that I wouldn't have normally had because I would have spent, 5 to 10 minutes waiting in a Starbucks drive-through if you've ever done that. They're always busy. How did that happen? It's the universe. So join along, participate in the activities, and see how the universe shows up for you. Anything that we do out of the norm is shifting the world ahead of us. So other than that, welcome and thanks for being here at this broadcast. Let's see what words we want to look at a little deeper. So please grab a drink, sit back, enjoy Truth Be Told.
So this month we're talking about 31 expressions of light. And one of those expressions that we talked about last week that I'd like to talk about a little bit further because it really stirred some interesting things in me is this idea and this expression of remembering. Now, I'll have to be honest, there are a lot of things that I would rather not remember, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. And sometimes we spend a lot of time trying not to remember those things. And we spend a lot of time trying to remember those things that bring us joy, bring us happiness, bring us this experience of peace and balance. And those things are amazing. So this idea of remembering, I think for me, brings up two things. One, it is remembering the truth of who I am. I've often thought about this experience of life, this spiritual path. It's less about learning new things and more about remembering. And when we think about remembering, when I think about this idea of remembering, I think about this idea of returning back to. So when we're talking about that in respect to remembering the truth of who we are as individualized expressions of this one thing, then this word remembering, this expression, brings to light turning back to that which we know to be true. Turning away from those things, those experiences, those stories that we create about ourselves, those stories that we create about others, those things that roll around in our heads. Turning our gaze from that back to this understanding that we are divine expressions of the One. And because of that we embody peace and joy and balance and truth and all things that are true and good and beautiful. That we are those things. These are not things that we have to learn. These are not things that we have to strive to get. These are not things that we have to work in order to obtain. But simply remembering those are the truths of who and what we are. And the trials and tribulations and bumps and grinds and dirt and all the stuff that gets caked on us in our life experiences can sometimes create this kind of whirlwind or dust of amnesia, and we forget about who we are. So this simple remembering, this simple of turning back to, this simple idea of pausing, stopping, taking a breath, stepping back a minute, and becoming the observer of our experiences. And when we can do that, we can create this space for remembering. And when we create this space for remembering, then all those things that we know to be true about ourselves that we sometimes forget can flood in, and we can really sink deep into that. And so remembering also gives another opportunity. Maybe it gives an opportunity for introspection. It gives an opportunity for us to look back on our experiences, look back on our interactions, look back on the ways that we have shown up in different areas of our life. And really to take a look at those things and really ask and really curious about, did I show up in a way that I want to in that situation way back when? And if I didn't, the amazing thing is that I can create a new experience. I can create a new way of responding, a new way of interacting, a new way of showing up, one that I want to do, one that brings this awareness, this awareness of the truth of who I am, this expression of who I am. And I can step boldly into that. And so remembering serves to bring those things into the light. And it's in the light, it's in this remembrance, this is in this reflection that we can make different choices. We can choose to act in ways that are in alignment with the truth of who we are. So remembering, it's a really sweet, special idea, that turning back towards, that bringing back our gaze to what's in front of us. And that's the truth of who and what we are. And so what better time than this time of year to really start practicing that, because it is a practice. It is the practice of remembering. And in doing that, we truly step into the light that we are.
The only thing I could think of the whole time was that scene from The Lion King where Mufasa appears in the clouds and he's talking to Simba and he's like, remember who you are.
Yeah.
Just picture over and over in my head. Yeah, it's like, oh man, how often do I think I am the one, like we have to create and do and make and whatever. And it's like, oh no, like we just have to remember. We have to it's like that uncovering idea that came up at some point in the last couple of weeks. It's all there. We're just uncovering. It's a totally different mindset for me.
Absolutely, pulling it back. And really, I mean, that's the whole point of everything, isn't it? Just to remember our true nature, to experience that and rediscover it. Life playing hide and seek with itself or whatever, that divine essence.
When I think, and I think that I was just thinking about it. That's also like the beauty of and the importance of community is sometimes we find it's hard for us to remember those truths, remember who we are, remember, those things about ourselves. And so that's the beauty of community, that people can hold those things and remember them for us until we can kind of catch up and remember that. And I think that I think that's the foundation of spiritual practice, the foundation of community, whether it's spiritual community or otherwise, is that reinforcing that remembering, because it is. These things that are swirling around in the ethers and these thoughts are not new thoughts. These are things that are just there, and it's just like coming back to it's the remembering, it's the dusting off of the things that have, layered on our awareness And sometimes we need people to help us do that.
I think this is going to be one of those moments for me. Like, we have those moments. We just looked back over last year and we had the moments that picked out and it was like, oh yeah, duh. This is going to be one of those moments in a year from now. I'm going to remember this episode and be like, you guys remember when we talked about remembering? I think so much of this teaching has a focus on the creative aspect.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much that mystical side of, and I know we talk a lot about, being rather than doing,
right,
and the balance between. But I think there's even this more deeper groundedness in the idea of remembering. So not only being, but remembering as we are being.
It's kind of like it's like coming home. It's like a coming home.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really, when I think about the word remembering, that's what I feel. I feel that coming back to.
I like that.
Yeah.
Rev Ryan, something that you just said really struck me, and it was about remembering, and as we're in community, how that works. So it's so much for me about I have my idea about this remembering, and and my ideas about who I am, what I am about, what I stand for. But until you actually interact with others, you don't necessarily know it. Just the idea of to clarify what it is that we think when we make a segment or something, it makes us have to get really clear about what it is that we do think. And so as we're remembering ourselves, I can sit at home all day and remember that I am a product of the divine. But then when I go out in the world and then just
forget all over people,
go out and get triggered and react in ways that I wouldn't like to. And so that community is very important.
Yeah.
Which kind of plays into my segment a little bit.
Imagine that.
And on that note.
All month long, we are celebrating light. Light in all of the ways that light shows up, in the ways that we typically think about light showing up, and even some of the ways we don't often think about how light shows up. And so today, we're going to talk about one of those ways, shadow. Shadow is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Much like the ego, we so often want to avoid these topics in life and even in teachings like this. This negative image or misunderstanding of how we actually view these two things, we try and avoid that because it's uncomfortable. And really, the shadow and the ego are actually pointing us towards some really great growth and really important things for us to know in our lives. So, shadow. I think this most often comes up in terms of shadow work, Toltec shadow work, things like Dark Side of the Light Chasers, if you're familiar with that work. This idea that we have these undesirable dark areas of our lives that need to be healed. And so we kind of tend to fall into two camps. I'm going to do my shadow work and heal all that stuff inside of me, or we're not going to acknowledge that because there's only positive, only good. And I think both of these things can coexist. But I want to introduce a third idea, that shadow itself, this idea that in casting light, anytime we cast light, we are also creating shadows. Light is, in fact, the thing that creates the shadow, which is kind of interesting because I don't think we often think of it that way. At least I didn't for a very long time. This idea that light itself is what creates the shadow. Simply by being here in form, we are creating shadow. We ourselves, anytime we stand anywhere, unless we're in pitch black, we are creating a shadow. We're casting a shadow over something else around us. So what is really interesting about this, I think if we look at this as a metaphor, that form is the metaphor for separation, right? And so we, existing as form, cast shadow, which is the metaphor also for separation. So until we realize we are actually 100% not separated, there is no separation, that we are in fact the light, we cast shadows. We continue to cast shadows until we realize we are the thing that also creates and shines the metaphysical, metaphorical light. So what's really important about this aspect of the shadow, this take on shadow, is that the shadow itself, which I think we tend to think of as bad, the undesirable, those things we're trying to do away with, that what is in that shadow is actually mirroring to us that which is our path forward. If we look at that thing, when we look at that thing and work through that thing, stepping through that situation, idea, belief, whatever it is, working through that is actually our path forward through growth. As uncomfortable as that may be, that shadow is actually there for us because it's our shadow. We are casting the shadow that is in front of us, and so what shows up there is actually for us. And so much like the ego, I think these two things get very often a bad rap, that we should not acknowledge these, we shouldn't listen to the ego, it's all bad. And yet what the shadow, what the ego are telling us and showing us is exactly where our growth edge is. It is exactly that thing that when we acknowledge it and do the work, if there's something that needs to be healed, to heal that. If there's something that needs to be changed, to change that. Acknowledging that and doing that work is exactly the thing that brings us forward in our path. So shadow, super important aspect of light, although I don't know that we always acknowledge it that way. Addressing the shadow, looking at the shadow, creates more light, creates our path forward towards growth.
Well, you blew my mind with this when you were talking about shadow on Sunday, strip down Sunday. So I should have pulled out all my notes that I'd taken from that. But the thing that struck me the most, and damn, I hate it, but is this idea, the idea that the shadows, those things that we're talking about, those looking at those things in ourselves, those things that we would call shadow within ourselves, are the things that are mirroring our path forward. And I hate that. Man.
That's so uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable, but it is. It's that growing edge. It's pointing us to the light. And maybe that's the point of it being uncomfortable, is that, oh, wait.
You don't want to stay there, yeah.
Right. And so, like, if we can approach those areas within us with that sort of tenderness, that, okay, this is trying to point me in what direction? To the direction to the light, direction to the truth, whatever you want to call it, essence, spirit. If we approach shadow that way, and almost like a welcoming sort of tone to it, then it really, I think we can shift those areas. We can use those areas in order to align ourselves, with the truth and with the light, and that recognition, that remembering that we are the light. Yes. So many things to apply.
Yeah, right.
All of them uncomfortable.
When I have done shadow work, it's amazing how when you learn and take that whatever experience and make it into your friend, into your learning opportunity, how in metaphysical circles they say then you stop seeing it. And that's really been my experience. And I'm like, okay, so did it actually stop happening, or is it just that now it just passes right through, without having that strong resistance to it? I don't know what the answer is, if it actually stops manifesting or it just passes through, but the experience is the same. And so, that's tough that the shadow work is the way that we get that growth, but it keeps happening again and again until we do get that growth, until we actually engage with it.
Well, and I think it's like the the yellow car, the yellow Jeep, right? Like you want a yellow Jeep, so you start seeing Jeeps all over the place. Or you get a new car, you start seeing that car all over the place. Right. Don't think about that car, you stop seeing the car. Where the car is never there before, or you just seeing them because you were thinking, it's like that. I think it's probably the same thing. It's probably both. But yeah, I think there's so much to say about any of these topics, and this topic in particular for me, I felt like there were so many areas to touch on. So I kind of just picked this one, and I think it's the one that is probably talked about least, if ever. And I think in a way we've kind of done a disservice, because like my experience with shadow work, I mean, I have a deep appreciation for shadow work, but it's like, it's that, you know, the tough go through the shadow work, right? Like it's kind of like the next level of if you're going to do shadow work, that's like the next level. This isn't for the, you know, the noobs or the, you know,
The faint of heart.
Yeah, right. And like I get that, and I think we also have created this like stigma around it. The same with the ego. I mean, really, like, I think they go hand in hand. Where like the ego got such a bad rap for so long, and I think it still does. Like in most new age, you know, more than new thought, but new age specifically, like ego is like you're supposed to shed the ego, man. You know, like that whole thing, right? And I think shadow too is like, oh, you shouldn't have the shadow. It's like, well, but you have to have an ego to you don't. You're going to have an ego. Like you have an ego, no matter what. You know, that doesn't mean you are egotistical. You're not necessarily an a-hole, but you have an ego.
Yeah.
Same. You have a shadow. You just, I mean, literally, like, you know, I mean, the metaphor of our being here, you can't be here without casting a shadow.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I think the same, like, when we realize the way my ego has developed is through the mess, through the trauma, through the experience, that has given me the tools. Those are like, when I work through all that, right, we can live in the mess and that all seems awful, or we can start working through that. And then those things become like our superpowers. I think with the shadow, it's the same thing, right? That stuff can stay in our shadow and it's super uncomfortable and negative and bad, which is why it has such a bad rap. Or we start looking at that and it does. It literally creates more of the experience of light. Looking at the shadow creates more light.
Right.
It's great. I mean, you know, what a different take on, oh, yeah, that's a really good thing. Let's do that.
Well, and even the idea about that we're always going to cast a shadow until we come into this like awareness that we are the light. It's the same idea as about the remembering all over or forgetting all over people. It's that same, it's the same sort of effect. Yeah. So that, you know, whether we're talking about remembering or we're talking about shadow, it's like when we are not aware or we don't live from that awareness, then we're always going to cast this shadow. And so it really is, we have to look at that to be like, oh yeah, there's the shadow. Oops, I need to turn back to this, you know, and almost as our kind of like a road sign. Our shadows are our road sign.
Yeah, I love this comment from Chris that when we turn away and refuse to look at our shadow, we are leaving others there. And I mean, that's literally like, because that's the other aspect. I mean, there's only so much to say in 3 to 5 minutes, right?
Right.
But that's the other piece of this too, is like our shadow is not just ours.
Right.
When we create a shadow, we're blocking out light. Like me standing in my light is casting a shadow on something else. There is something else out in front of me or behind me that shadow is getting cast over. And, you know, all of a sudden this starts to turn into a whole other episode, but yeah, there's so much. So I would just, you know, like to leave it on the lighter side of the shadow, right? Like looking at the shadow immediately moves us forward and creates more light.
Yeah. Truth.
Which is I think brilliant. Whoever came up with that, I don't know. But
gives others permission to be okay as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're not done yet, but I want to take a few moments to talk about how you can get involved in the fun that we're having here at Soul Evolution Collaborative. Now, of course, if you're watching this, you already know that we have Truth Be Told on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, where we explore topics for the month and themes for the week and kind of give it our unique take on it and the things that are important to us and talk about these principles and these spiritual ideas and maybe a way that you may not have heard of it. On Wednesdays, if spiritual practice is your jam, then we have Unwind Wednesdays, which is a meditative practice. And you can sign up by going to the website at soulevolutioncollaborative.org, and you can sign up on the event and you can get a link for that. And Thursdays is the gathering. So these Thursdays are our opportunity to come together in small group community and to discuss a little bit further the topics of the week. So it's a lot of fun, folks. We get together, we share our own experiences of these topics and how they've showed up in our lives. And we learn from each other, which is fun. It's just the beauty of community. It's one of our favorite events here at Soul Evolution Collaborative. On Sundays at 12:30, we have a strip down Sunday, which is kind of a stripped down version of a Sunday morning service. Basically, it is the talk and inspirational message and a unique take on the topic of the week. Stay tuned for more events that are being added each and every month. Don't want to forget our 31 expressions of light. It's our December thing that we're doing. We're having so much fun doing it. If you want to hop on board and get reminders and links and for the word of the day and activity of the day, go over to soulevolutioncollaborative.org and sign up for 31 expressions of the light. All right, now back to the show.
So we're looking at uncovering the light, celebrating 31 expressions of the light in ways that maybe we wouldn't have thought of before. The way I'm looking at this week is engaging. Why do we need to engage more? Well, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling in this world is people are feeling isolated and lonely. And at a time when our technology is through the roof about ways to connect with more people, we should be going the opposite direction and feeling more connected. So what is it that we're doing? How can we do it differently? Well, one of the things that we talked about for our daily activity for this month, for this particular word, engaging, was instead of pulling back or disengaging from social media, which is all well and good, and I am not saying don't do that, but we're talking about also instead engaging more in real life with people around us, with our environment, with ourselves, getting curious about life. So the first thing I want to talk about is engaging with people. Get a hold of somebody from your past, somebody you haven't talked to for a while, and just reach out. Eulogize somebody that's still living. We save all of our good words and good memories for people until after they're gone. Well, let's reach out to people and just let them know some of our good memories and good words while they're still here. Create more engagement. Another way that we can create engagement, and it's going to sound a little weird, but hear me out. Instead of waving hi to your neighbor, let's get to know them. Run up and say, hey, I'm part of a project. Because now, I just said it, this is now a project. I'm part of a project to create more engagement in this world. Can I ask you a weird question? And Google this because you can find a ton of questions to ask, but I'm going to give you a couple here. One is, what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten? Another is, who was your favorite teacher from your past? Just a simple little question that invites them to open up about themselves a little bit. And then for the rest of the time that you know them, every time you wave or say hi, you've got a deeper connection because you took the effort to engage. And this is how we're going to create more community on this planet, which is going to help us move forward. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is engaging with yourself. How are you growing and learning? What are you curious about? Where can you put some energy to? One simple thing to do is reading 10 pages a day. If you can come up with the time and the energy to read 10 pages a day, it's not too much. Every month you would read 300 pages. The average New York Times, the #1 bestseller nonfiction book, is 273 pages. You could have 12 of those read in a year, expand your mind, expand your consciousness, bring things for you to engage with others about conversation, learning more about the world and getting curious about the world around you, and opening up to greater and greater things. We continue to grow, we continue to engage, and just reaching out in the world. This is how we can make the world more connected, more light, and really create this new consciousness that is unfolding. Whether you know you're part of it or not, we are all contributing.
So, Chris, I have a question.
Yes.
What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oxtail.
Oh wow.
Oxtail, yeah.
Oxtail.
It was actually kind of delicious, but yeah, we had this conversation recently. My daughter likes to ask this question because she's got a little bit of a taste for insects, and she's eaten live, large grubs, mealworms. I cannot do that. She's got
Like just
way
like in the
more encouragement.
backyard or like
No, it was a challenge. I think the first thing she ate was like
was
a
a dare.
cricket at school, and then she, since then, has eaten mealworms. She ate love bugs during love bug season in Orlando. Oof,
Wow. Okay.
that's probably not good for you because I know that they etch your car paint if you don't wash them off of your car. So
Yeah.
we told her not to eat a lot of those. We don't know, that might be like some kind of
What's that gonna
acid
do?
in their stomachs or something.
Yeah.
Wow, adventure.
Aren't you glad you asked that question?
I did not expect that response.
Oh, that's so good.
But
Now
I
you
do-
know
I
something
do-
more about me.
I know, but I do like that idea because just being curious about people, being curious about people's experiences, being curious about how my experiences work with your experiences. I do think that I like that idea of being curious, asking questions. Sometimes I think we do tend to, for whatever reason, kind of stay in our own little bubble, of attention, our own little bubble of importance or focus, and sometimes just to kind of step out of that. It allows us to see the world and see others in a new and expanded way. And I think it shows up not only in that, but then that can show up in other areas of our life too. When we have this inquisitive, curious sort of mind, and it's not just for the sake of asking questions, but actually truly wanting to know about someone else and someone else's experience. And maybe something that you've learned in your experience, I can learn in mine, and not have to go through some of the things that you've gone through because I, got the tip from you. Not that I'll be eating any bugs anytime soon, but
Yeah, right. I love that idea of engaging with yourself. And like at first I had to think about it. I was like, what does that mean? And then I realized I think for most of society, we're trying to like disengage with that voice, disengage with our bills, disengage with finances, disengage with relations. We're trying to like mute some of that noise for like a little quiet, but that doesn't ever mute the noise, right? It makes the noise just gets louder because the noise, it wants to be heard, right?
right.
So I thought about that, like, wow, that like for society by and large, that idea of just engaging with yourself can be a life-changing idea, a life-changing like moment of a day, to just engage in not trying to mute or subdue that noise, but just kind of starting to be with yourself. And certainly that feels different now than it did 10 years ago for me. But I suspect there's a lot of people out there right now who, that's the first step. That's the first step. And I think a lot of times people ask, where do I start?
Yeah.
And that would probably be a good place. That would be a good place. Yeah. Just
Going within.
Just engage with yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Before we tune out, what's the weirdest things you've ever eaten?
Snail.
Oh yeah, that's cargo.
Yeah.
Shark fin soup.
Oh,
In a village in Trinidad. Shark fin soup.
Okay. All right.
I hope that shark fin soup is on the way out though, because it's not great for the sharks.
It was not great for me either.
No.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
If they use the rest of the shark, then maybe, because I know some people eat shark, but I know so often that they just use the fins and that's it, and then they throw the rest away, and that's awful.
Yikes. Yeah.
No judgment against you, Rev Ryan.
I'll
in
stick
Trinidad.
with my salad.
Hey man, lettuce is alive too,
Yeah, man.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much for spending this hopefully quality time with us tonight. We know that we do, in fact, have the best job in the world, and are more than thrilled to be doing this with you, because we would just be talking to ourselves otherwise. So if you would like to explore these topics further, join in conversation Thursday, check out stuff on the website. There's so much information out there. And also, this community and communities like this are how we really change the world. This is how we make a difference in the world. And so we are supported by you and people like you. If you are in a place to make a financial donation, we would greatly accept your gifts. If you are in a place where you know someone else who would like to make a financial donation, we would greatly accept their gifts. And there is a donation option on our website in the menu. If you go to soulevolutioncollaborative.org, click donate at the top of the screen, and everything will be there for you. So if you would like to continue this conversation, you can join us Thursday night. We'll have a little bit of a deeper dive into some of these topics. Otherwise, head over to the website at your leisure and peruse the growing library of material and videos and all that kind of fun stuff. So for some of you, we will see you Thursday night. And for everyone else, we will see you next week.